let's do this. Welcome to Behind the Usher Station. Woo!
I'm Alex.
I'm Jerome.
And I'm Jonathan.
We all used to work together as ushers at the IMAX Theater.
And now we're doing a podcast. So if you like what we do here, please like, subscribe, and share. And send it to all of your friends that you know. Facebook and Twitters and YouTubes.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, the YouTubes.
Grandpa?
Yep.
All right.
Good old YouTubes. Back in my day, you didn't
Just
have
like
that.
and subscribe.
Yes, follow us. Woo, it's going to be fun. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to our show. So as you probably all know, or maybe don't, it's Pride Month. And Alex, you have a special somewhere that you're heading this weekend.
Is it that special if it happens every year?
Yes.
Christmas is special. Hey, your birthday is probably special, right?
No, it's not.
I like...
Not anymore. 24 now. Well, I'm going to be.
Well, I actually like to... I don't like to say it's my birthday. I like to say I was ripped from the womb. Because Big Wolf reference. Because I was a C-section. So I didn't... But
Same. I was a C-section.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a Beowulf reference because Beowulf couldn't be killed by any man birthed from a woman. Mm-hmm. But the guy who actually killed Beowulf was ripped from his mother's belly. So C-section. Yeah, my mom doesn't like that. I say that, but I think it's funny. Going back to the Pride episode, instead of going to topic on Beowulf, I am actually going to be walking in the Seattle Children's section of the Pride Parade at Seattle's Pride.
Woo!
Parade. I think I just said parade like 20 times right there. The Seattle Pride Parade, Sunday the 30th, I will be walking with Seattle Children's Hospital. So it's going to be fun and exciting. I have to be up super early on Sunday, but it's going to be fun and so much walking. But
Are you nervous?
No, not really. I've done it before. I've done it a couple years ago. I was going to do it again, but I ended up going on a trip to San Diego, and then I didn't get to do it last year because of school and work. So this year I'm just excited to go again. And I am part of the LGBT community. So it's nice to be among my own kind, as I like to say. So it's going to be a fun day of festivities and stuff.
Sounds like a cool event. And,
yeah.
It's proud of you. It's actually
proud of you.
Yeah, I can be proud of my friend.
Thank you, Jerome.
Is this a little on the nose, like pride, proud? You couldn't think of another word?
No, I feel like it's very apt to this situation.
He's proud of me during this proud month.
But it's I've never been to a Pride Parade before, but I think it is a cool celebration for sure. Especially considering how far the LGBT community has come from where they started, even let's say like 5 years ago, and trying to get the right to do things that most people already have just built in by living in this country without even having to try.
And it's actually interesting that you mentioned that like 5 years ago, seeing the different representation of the different type of LGBT type of people of different sexualities now seen on TV is quite amazing, because usually I would never see somebody who represents my sexuality on TV. I am asexual, and for those who don't know what that is, it basically just means I have a really low sex drive, and I just don't want anybody to touch me, and just everybody leave me alone. And basically I would never see anybody with that type of sexuality on TV ever. It was either gay or lesbian or bi or straight, and even there's still a lot of biphobia out there, but those were mainly the three big ones you would see. And then for asexuality to even be thought of, it was just, not possible. But then on Netflix, they actually have the show called BoJack Horseman. And there's a character called Todd on there, and he came out as asexual, and it was like really awesome to see that. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm a lot like this character. Before he even came out, there was a lot about him that I related to. And then finally, when he did come out as asexual, I was like, oh, I relate to him on that level too. That was like really cool to see that representation there. And I think people, we get caught up in a lot of the diversity representation throughout the rest of the year, and in Pride Month, it comes out a lot to see that with the sexuality of gay and lesbian. But there is also the other types of, asexuality, trans, or fluid gender, all the other ones that don't get too much representation out there. So it's nice to see that in some shows.
Yeah. And so, that's kind of where we wanted to talk about, like, the different representation of LGBTQIA, and I know it extends. The paper, we're looking for the...
I used to have it. I had it up.
Okay, we're searching. We're searching right now. We want to get this right. But we have dead air right now.
Yeah.
Well, you guys can keep talking.
I was going to bring up, just to go right head first into the topic, a show that I'm interested in, and I keep forgetting to watch it because I've been, I have so many other things on my list. Like I've been still watching Jessica Jones and some other stuff. But show on FX, but is now on Netflix right now, is Pose. I've been meaning to check out Pose. It just looks so interesting, and I know nothing about ball culture, especially during that time period of the 70s. So I was like, this is an interesting topic to touch on. And going past even that, the fact that they have hired the two main characters are actually transgender actresses that are playing transgender characters in the show. So I'm really curious to see how well they do the representation there, and also learn more about ball culture during that time period, and see what they got right and what they got, what stuff like is actually happened in real life and all that stuff.
Yeah, that is pretty cool that they do have a show now like that that's representing transgender and then people of color and stuff like that. It shows that they're opening up to so much more variety and so much more options out there. It's not just the same old thing. It's so much more interesting now, and so much more all.
And I know the star of that show, or one of the stars of the show, I forget his name, Billy something. Billy.
I don't know all the stars by name.
But he's been a rising star. And I've seen, like, I'll look, like, the Met Gala, he was there, and, like, a lot of the other red carpets, he's been a red carpet kind of standout. So one of the shows that I was going to talk about was a show that recently, it's actually a movie. It dropped on Netflix. The Perfection. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet.
I have not seen it.
Okay, it's really good. It does. The main characters, they are lesbians, but the way that they tell their story, I feel, is not stereotypical and not the norm that I've seen usually of similar stories in the media. And I'm not going to spoil anything because that would be rude, but it's really good. And I think they definitely, it definitely represents that community well.
So I did find out what the whole thing is. It's LGBTQIA, refers to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning, intersex, and asexual or allied, which is, I feel like, just a whole lot. But I guess to be inclusive is, a lot. You got to get everybody
corner,
in some way. So.
Their flag is a rainbow. Yes, they are very inclusive.
Technically,
about every color.
You know what I love about my flag, the asexual flag? It's gray, white, and purple, which are colors that I wear just in general. So I was like, sweet, my colors are like dark kind of colors. I'm like, that just matches me. Speaking of Netflix shows, there is a show, and sadly now it is canceled. It was One Day at a Time.
Oh,
Have you heard of that
show? I know it got canceled, but a lot of people were petitioning to bring it back.
It is so good because it's also like Perfection. There's a person. It's people of color. It's a Latin family. They're Cuban. I believe they're Cuban. But it's nice to see because the character, the teenage girl, is a lesbian, and she comes out to her mom, she comes out to her family and grandmother who are traditional, Catholics and traditional Cubans. And I understand that from certain aspects, in kind of a way. I wasn't really ever scared of coming out to my mom, because I actually originally came out to my mom as bi when I was a teenager before I really understood anything, because again, sexuality really wasn't spoken about too much like it is nowadays. Luckily now it's more spoken about. Now people know, like, hey, there isn't just bi, lesbian, or gay or straight. Now there's all these other stuff. And so now I got to know all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm not bi, I'm this. And I'm like, and I got to come out to my mom. But coming out to like other family members, and there's this whole thing with like, in Spanish, families, I'm supposed to get married and have kids. And, being 28, I'm actually kind of old for not having kids, not being in a relationship. And that's something I really just don't want. So seeing that in that kind of form where she comes out to her families and all that stuff is like, oh, I get that. And where her father has this like disapproving look at her quinceañera when she comes out to him. I'm like, I kind of had an argument with my dad about not wanting kids. He was completely fine when my sister came out to him, but me not wanting kids, that was a step too far. That's... I was like, come on now, really? But to have that representation and then to have it see it there was like kind of great. And for it to be such, instead of being an adult woman, and to be a teenage girl, and to actually have an accepting family, because a lot of the shows you have the character come out and then the family is like awful, or being like, oh, this is just a phase, or oh, I don't want to talk to you. They kind of turn away. To actually have the family members like accepting and loving and just right away being like, okay, you are what you are, we love you, we support you, is I feel like a greater representation, and like gives more security, and it makes kids less afraid. Because so many shows are like showing people like, oh, your family's going to abandon you, or oh, your parents are never going to talk to you again. Like in Senses 8, with the transgender character, like her father never spoke to her again, or said they wouldn't talk to her again. And I was like, why though?
Well, it's just set up though, because at the near the, I think it's the second season.
Spoiler.
At this point, if you haven't seen the show, it's on Netflix. The whole show's on Netflix. At this point, if you haven't seen it, you're not going to watch it.
Didn't they do like a little movie too?
They did a movie to wrap it up because they canceled it. Everybody was pissed. And so they're like, all right, look, we'll do a movie that will finish out the season, because the second season ends off on a really big cliffhanger too. So
well, it just got too expensive to shoot. That was all it was.
Because they were traveling to 8 different countries to film the whole thing. It was very expensive. But that whole setup though was for in the second season, that character gets married, and there's a moment where a dude who's like hunting her down for like other reasons, who's trying to kill her, is her dad sticks up for her and defends her. So it was to give her parents an arc. For them to be, I
get that there's that whole
where they accept her.
There's that whole redemption scene that parents are supposed to have, but I think that's quite stupid, because then it's like, are like a lot of the parents in these shows, I'm like, are they really worthy of redemption though? Like, yeah, there's a difference between like supporting and loving your kid or accepting and loving your child, because like sometimes it may take a second to accept something of your child, but that doesn't mean you don't love and support them. And like, I don't think people like understand that entirely. They're like, oh, if you automatically love your child, you should accept them for who they are. Well, I don't think so, actually. But that doesn't mean you're supposed to like automatically cut them out and be like, no, forget you. It's like, okay, I don't understand your life. I still love you, but it's gonna you gotta give me some time. And I also think it's a little unfair in a lot of these character shows that demand acceptance right away, and then like, okay, if you don't accept me, I'm never talking to you again. It just creates like an unrealistic path for like kids in real situations that are coming out to their parents. You're setting up such a fake like path for these kids. They're getting scared because here's a story of my parents never speak to me again, or my dad says he loves me, or my parents say they love me, but they just can't accept me for who I am, or they need time and they should just accept me right away. So I'm never talking to them again. And it just, sets up this this site where it's like things are way more dramatic, then they actually may be. Sometimes it is just being comfortable with who you are and talking to your parents. And yeah, they may not understand right away, but like them knowing that you're comfortable talking to them, be like, okay, it may take us some time, but we still love you. Just you need to give us some time.
I think it depends though on the person, because like I grew up in South Carolina, and so for me, like now currently you can get married if you're part of the LGBT in South Carolina, but there was a time where I had friends that they would not come out to their parents, not only because they knew their parents wouldn't accept them, but they would be outright more or less disowned. And I'm sure some of them, some people in South Carolina who are part of that community, that's still the case, because South Carolina is just a place of just strong conservative thinking. And so for them, maybe that story might resonate with them because they're like, that is going to be my life. Like there is no way, like there's just some people who just won't change. Well, and so that's how they feel.
One of the like positives, so I did my research, as you guys know.
Of course.
I always do my research before I come on these podcasts. I don't come up on here sounding stupid. Anyway, so there is a show. I wanted to kind of like relate this to, because a lot of kids shows nowadays have LGBT representation,
right?
Which is awesome. And there's a show on Disney Channel. I
was just about to mention that.
Yeah, called Andy Mack, and one of the characters actually came out on the show.
Andy Mack?
Yeah, Andy Mack.
It's a weird title.
It is getting a lot of buzz with the kids. Kids are enjoying it.
It's canceled now.
It's canceled?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What?
But
this is new news to me.
All right. Slow down. Let him talk about his research.
God dang it.
Go on, Jonathan. Do your research.
But yeah, one of the characters came out, and if you look at the clip, he comes out to his good friend, I believe. And she accepts him, and then I'm not sure what happens with the rest of the show, but I think he later comes out to other people on the show, and all accepting as well. So there is a positive kind of representation of that scenario. And then there's also like you mentioned on one of our childhood ruined episodes, like Arthur, they had Mr. Ratburn's wedding.
Yeah. And I absolutely love how they did that, because they didn't like signal that at all. They didn't say anything about that at all. They really didn't show it up until he got married, and even the kids were like, oh no, he's gonna marry this horrible woman. And then they're like, oh, he's marrying him? That's fantastic. I think it was like the chocolate shop guy or something.
I think so.
Because I think I remember now they're like, oh, we're going to get free chocolate. So I think they were excited about that. So, and I also love that where they don't give any lead. They're like, okay, character's just this character. And that's another thing about a lot of the LGBT or the characters that are represented in shows and movies. There's like this strong like gayness they'll put to them, and I don't understand why. After they come out, they'll make them like an ultra gay. No, I'm serious. And I'll give a good example of this. In Supergirl.
I knew you were gonna bring that
No,
up.
because I brought it up multiple times.
I know. That's, I'm not saying it's like a bad thing. I was waiting. I was like, when's she gonna bring up Supergirl?
Yeah, no, because I have a problem with this because of her name is actually Alex Davers, the sister of Supergirl. She comes out as lesbian in the first season, like mid-season or something. And it's like, cool. All right, cool. Great character. Really love her. Kicks ass, And as she goes on, she's bright. She's intelligent. She's taking more force and everything. But like by like the end of the second episode, they kind of start making her ultra gay, where she's no longer having this femininity to her that she had in the first season, and suddenly by the third season she's got this like really short unnecessary hair that's like in this like weird faux hawk thing going on, and she looks like the stereotypic like butch lesbian character. And it's like, but why did this all need to happen though? Why did you like strip her of this feminine equality that you once had and then put her into this like butchy lesbian character? All of a sudden, why did you make her look like you made her look like a stereotypic lesbian character, and for what reason? She was great mix between the.
Is this the character? Because I wanted to get a picture of what you're looking at. What
yeah,
you're talking
definitely.
about, so
But
that way I
even
can
her hair
find
is
out.
not like that anymore. It was like straight up like.
Jerome's currently searching for a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
I'm seeing the pictures of her.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is old her, like what she looked like in the first season or whatever.
Yeah, where she had a good deal of femininity, and they kind of took the femininity away from her. And I see that you do that with a lot of characters, you know, whether they came out gay or lesbian. Yeah.
Is this what you're talking about? Like this right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is weird.
They like cut off all her hair.
And that's probably the actual actress's real hair.
Yeah. And I noticed they do that with like a lot of like characters once they come out as lesbian or gay.
Do you think they're going to do that to Mr. Ratburn?
Oh no.
Well, the show's over now, so I don't think.
Oh, did they
No, it's not.
still? They
Are
did
they
it.
still going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
That just happened like a couple months ago.
Oh.
That episode.
I didn't know that.
Arthur will never die.
Yeah.
I will literally cry the day Arthur died.
But let's be real. When was the last time you watched it?
Fair enough.
I think
I'm still gonna be sad when I hear the news.
Yeah.
I will say that's the one thing about gay representation that I do have kind of an issue with for certain things. It's half of what I like. I felt about Crazy Rich Asians. Like I love that movie. And I think it's a great film. Everyone does a great job in it, and I love the representation, but of Asian culture.
Yeah.
But I think it was still weird to me that in a movie that's trying to knock down tropes and be like, hey, we're gonna make a movie with an all Asian cast, and it's gonna be not like, you know, it's gonna be something different and fresh. They still had the stereotypical gay cousin character who's super feminine and is like immediately befriends the girlfriend of his cousin or whatever and gives her fashion tips and all type of stuff. And I was like, really? You're still doing that?
There's a meme that says there's always that one gay cousin, and if you don't know who they are, it's probably you. And I read that to my sister, and she's like, there's no gay cousin. And then I looked at her, and she's like, oh crap, I am the gay cousin. Which for my sister, who is a lesbian, it's true, she is. And I always think that's funny because they always have that stereotypic, the one gay cousin that comes in who's very flamboyant or who's very like butchy. And I think that needs to like die a little bit. Like I love what they did with Mr. Ratburn, where he was just all of a sudden, hey, he's wearing a guy. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like a normal human being. He acted like a normal human being.
Well, rather, he was himself. He's a character, not a stereotype.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Because you said normal human being, so I wanted to clarify. It's just that he's like.
Well, he's not a human. He's a rat.
If you are flamboyant. And that is your personality as a person, a part of the LGBT, and that's you. That is you. Do your thing. However, that's not everybody. That's not representation. That's not.
Fair enough. I get what you're saying, and I may have.
Like,
yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
What's it called?
Well,
representation from everyone of that.
You're right. You know, there are straight males who are very flamboyant as well. But they didn't make. Well, that's the whole issue. There are straight males who are flamboyant. And because of that stereotype, they get, you know, considered to be gay. And then, you know, they get stuck in this stereotype as well. And it's like, it's harmful for them too, you know?
I mean, it's definitely, especially because it makes me think of one of my favorite movies that does, I think, gay representation really well, is Moonlight.
I have not seen Moonlight.
Moonlight is an amazing film. It definitely earned the Academy Award. Have you seen Moonlight, Jonathan?
I have not seen Moonlight. And I know it's on Netflix, so I need to be watching it.
It's okay. I mean, it's like...
Hold on. I just want to know what that sound was.
Because I know I need to be watching. I should have watched it like 2 years ago. So.
I mean, it's okay. I mean, when I saw it in theater, literally, I was the only black person in attendance. So don't feel so bad.
But we are in Seattle, like, to be fair.
That's true.
I'm pretty sure we are the only people of color, and we're all in the same room right now.
But but Moonlight does a great job of touching on not only gay representation from a street kid growing up in the streets of Miami, but also talking about gay representation in the African American community, because it's something that is very still stigmatized and has a lot of, especially with males, not so much with females as much as it has with men, because Black men, it's a big thing in the community of like, yo, you either hard or you're not. And if you're gay or bi or whatever your sexuality is, there's a lot of people that will judge you for that. Especially if you have a certain type of attitude about it.
Well, it's also seen as a big thing in the Latin community too, for males, because I've seen it with my own family on my dad's side, and then in the community that I grew up in, because I grew up in not the greatest, neighborhoods in Chicago, where there were a lot of shootings and drive-bys, and in the industrial area. So I remember seeing that, and I actually grew up in like the church and the bad church, and honestly, had it not been from my mom, I think I would have grown up with more of a warped sense of what the LGBT and the community meant to me, because the church we did go to was one of those churches where, like, that's a sin, everything's a sin, we're all going to hell unless you get married and have babies.
Well, definitely growing up in Baptist church, that was
we were
sure.
We were part of the Fundamental Independent Baptist people, and if you don't know what that is, because many people don't know when I say that, that's the Westboro Baptist people.
Well, I know.
Yeah,
they protested outside my school once.
Yeah, I was part of that church, but weirdly enough, my mom has always been very open-minded for somebody who took us to that church like every Sunday and demanded that I pay attention, although she may have demanded, but she never actually forced me to listen, and she enjoyed when I argued with them. So it was like this weird, like, pay attention, but good on you for arguing with every single person in that building. So I think I got a lot of mixed messages growing up.
One of the things that I was going to say, Jerome, you talked about, like, within, like, the Black community, kind of relating it to, we talked about striking vipers in our Black Mirror episode, but we never talked about, I don't think we really talked about, like, the gayness of it all.
Yeah.
And that,
sure.
like, do you think that the representation was good representation or was it representation at all? I did watch As Told by Kenya, which I mentioned in one of our previous podcasts. And she did a discussion on the episode, and she talked about how, Carl and Danny, they did not want to necessarily come to the conclusion that they might be something other than, heterosexual. So that really played into the conflict of the story, and how even though Danny has Danny has a wife in Theo, and Carl did whatever with the girls he, hooked up with, that doesn't necessarily make them straight. Like, they are queer people. So I was wondering what your guys' thoughts were on that.
I mean, that's half of what I was saying. What I think what all of us were saying is that they never went the full mile with the concept of like what that meant to be in this kind of virtual reality relationship on a video game, and that went even past the idea of just them being in the video game, but also the idea of like, what does love mean in a virtual standpoint, especially in a world where you can feel every sensation, because now we just like have small relationships on Facebook. You have people that like, oh, we meet up on Facebook and then we get together, whatever. But in a world where like in that show where they present a scenario where you could full on have a legit relationship in a like down to even having physical interactions with each other, like what does that mean for your relationship? What does that mean for your sexuality if you're two men who are inhabiting the bodies of other people, and that sort of thing? And I felt like it didn't go far enough to really dive into sexuality on that level, especially between two men who were once best friends and are now find themselves in a different position in their life.
I think it was going back to that whole being people of color and being queer, it's just difficult in general to have this conversation, and then for them to try to acknowledge it as it's, I think in some sense it's easier now when you're younger to have the conversation, and then as you're older and then you have a family now, and then try to backtrack into talking about possibly being queer is definitely not something anybody would want to acknowledge, especially when you have a wife and kids. And I think they could have delved deeper into that issue, but they were so focused on like this weird, like, is it cheating or is it not cheating, when everybody kind of knew it was. The weird thing I thought with that episode,
definitely was.
Yeah. The weird thing I thought with that episode is, you know, if he really thought for, not Carl, what was the other one, guys? Danny was the one married to Theo, right?
Yeah.
If he thought the video game sex was so great, why didn't he ever just try it with his wife? Like,
on the video game?
Yeah.
That's what I thought we were going with.
Yeah, I didn't know why he didn't ever just try it with his wife if it was so good. And then with Carl, I understood he did, like, he ventured and tried with other people, but Danny never tried it with his wife or with other people. He just stuck with Carl. So clearly he did have feelings for Carl, and he always had. He just was never willing to acknowledge it, so he moved towards, you know, the heterosexual side, and he was just, you know, hiding his feelings for his best friend, you know. And I think that comes down to, again, being, you know, queer and being a person of color. It's always just sometimes easier to hide. And, you know, we don't get a lot of representation of that. And when we do, it's always those very stereotypic characters.
So, as you know, I got to put Big Brother in here again, but I'm a huge fan.
You do you, Jonathan.
I'm a huge fan of Big Brother. And every season that they have like a new cast, it's usually, they cast very stereotypically and very kind of one track. And I love the show, but that's one of the things that I kind of like, you know, it's a downside. And they always have one gay man. Every single season, you'll look at every single season, they'll have one gay man. And usually it is like, you know, he's very flamboyant and, you know, out there. Sometimes they'll have a lesbian, sometimes they won't. But it is very same with the black people that they cast on the show. They usually only cast like one or two black people. But that's neither here nor there. So
I really hate when they have the queer character that doesn't understand personal space. Like, they always have the really gay guy who constantly is like touching people or like, you know, flirting or something. Like, they make it almost seem like the gay man can't understand like personal space or boundaries, so it makes it seem like almost all gay men can't do that. And I think that helps with the stereotype, or encourages that uncomfortableness that like, oh, he's gay, he's gonna, you know, try to climb into my lap or try to touch my hair or something. And it's just like, well, no, they don't want to touch you. It's not like TV. Nobody's gonna touch you, dude. You're fine. So I think that's another thing they really have to like focus on. It's that whole boundaries thing. A lot of the queer characters they have on TV don't show with the lesbians and it's that always the gay men are always like touching somebody. They're always like, when they do that act, they're like, oh, they're always touching somebody's hair. They're always like, oh, it's okay, I'm gay. And it's like, well, no, that's not how gay people work in real life. I'm pretty sure the person who's writing this is not gay or something. So I don't think they really understand.
I think that's probably been, as a person who writes scripts and content, I think that's been the biggest thing to try and nail down is gay representation and getting it right. Because I try to be very inclusive with my writing, and so I've only written like a few gay characters. But I never try and make them like extremely flamboyant or too much of a stereotype in an attempt to try and make some more original characters, especially because the people I know who are part of the LGBT community I don't think I know anybody who's extremely flamboyant outside of one. And you know who I'm talking about. But he's awesome, and I love him. He's great. Ross.
Oh, yeah.
Ross is
We
great.
do.
But even Ross, he's never like he's not like, you know.
No, he understands personal space.
He very much
that's the whole
personal
thing.
Space. He's very respectable, and he's a great guy. But there's so many people I know who are part of the LGBT that are not like the people I see in media and stuff, and those are the kind of the people that inspire me to write the type of LGBT characters I write.
Like me.
Yeah. So I would hope that there's more, you know. I would love to see more characters on TV that represent the LGBT in a way that feels more organic and real than just being the stereotypical like super confident one that's like always got great advice for their girlfriends or whatever. Or
I have no good advice. I am not confident at all. Like, I'm the least person. You should never come to me for advice. I do not have my life together. Like, not
But
at all.
Alex, I'm going to prom next week, and I don't know if I want to go with Cindy or not. You have to tell me some advice.
All right,
Give me,
well,
like,
if her
a great
name is Cindy, then no. You should not be going with anybody named Cindy.
Named Cindy.
And lots of things. Cindy?
It's the most Molly Ringwald name I can think of. From like,
You could have just said Molly.
Is it better?
Molly.
Molly's better than Cindy, yes.
My dog was named Molly. Rest in peace. Anyway,
Lauren's dog is named Molly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, she's so pretty.
What kind of dog is it?
It's like a black lab, but it's also mixed with I think part of a German Shepherd.
Oh.
It's like solid. It's like very bulky, but it's like solid, so it's not fat. But she's all black, but she has red tufts in her fur. So when the sun hits her, she has like red like highlights.
Oh.
She's so pretty. She's such an anxious dog, though. I just want to cuddle and pet her, but she won't let me.
Back to the representation. Jerome, you talked about like you want to see more on television and on your screens. Well, I have some good news for you from doing my research. I know, 2 in 1 episode.
Well,
What
you
is
sound
this?
like a scientist every time you say it. It's just like, well, listen, I know what everybody thinks, but 4 out of 5 dentists say that.
Hey, because of that, I use Sensodyne, so.
That's true. I use Pronamel, so I'm right there with you.
I use Crest. Do I use Crest?
Wait a minute, you better use some toothpaste.
No, I can't think of the.
I use Sensodyne, and then I use that charcoal at night. Whitens your teeth.
Oh.
Yeah, I taste weird, but it actually does help whiten your teeth a little bit. But no, go on with your research.
You know.
Yeah, go on with your research.
So, this is from The Guardian. This article is from about 7 months ago. And in part, it says, the annual Where We Are on TV report has found that 8.8 of regular characters expected to appear in the next year on U.S. network television are LGBT, up 6.4% the previous year, with 50% of them being people of color. There was also an equal percentage of male and female characters, an improvement on last year. Netflix was named as the streaming service with the highest number of LGBT characters, thanks to shows such as Orange is the New Black and Luke Cage. There was also special praise for Will and Grace, Supergirl, Empire, and How to Get Away with Murder, which were all singled out for their inclusivity.
I don't like Orange is the New Black, and I get a lot of slack for that. But that does sound like it's really good, and I think because Netflix is its own streaming system, and it doesn't have to abide by a lot of like the TV rules, and like the FCC has a little less hold on it. Mm-hmm. It gets to have more of that like LGBT, because you know the ratings of like PG-13 and you know PG, it's a little less like stronghold on Netflix.
And also I think because the audience generally for network TV is like middle America, older. Mm-hmm. They're not generally as accepting of this community as people
First
would
off,
be on.
I am from middle America. I'm from Illinois. So watch yourself.
Middle America, some of Middle America.
Excuse you.
It is,
But
like,
I'm pretty sure.
but that's generally like if you look at like the red states versus
That's
like,
just stereotype in there.
well,
I can tell you right now, South Carolina is, I always, whenever I
And that is
how
gone
blood
on.
red South Carolina is, I'm always like, just remember, they're the first state to be like, what? We can't have slaves? All right, we leaving. Let's go. Pack up your stuff,
That's what I'm
Jim
saying.
Bob.
Like,
let's get out of here.
Like generally, like Middle America isn't as progressive as like some of the other states. Not to get political or anything, but if you look at the red states versus the blue states, it's like it is. But that's like the older audience, like of network television. It just goes to show.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But
It's not my states, but
the only thing that's weird though.
But I don't think
Illinois.
Illinois is a blue state though.
yeah, it is.
So that won't even count in like I'm talking like
No,
deep
I just
South,
like screwing
Kentucky,
with you.
Like
I just like
Texas.
screwing with you.
She's just messing with. But go ahead, Alex. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No, I get what you're saying about it's the older generation. Netflix is very much like a younger crew, even younger than us when we were talking earlier about coming of age movies and stuff like that. They're more comfortable watching coming of age movies that can often include LGBT characters and stuff like that, who are more just, average characters instead of the stereotypes on Netflix or on Hulu or on, streaming shows, because it's easier to watch than on, regular TV, because a lot of people don't even have like cable anymore. They just have like streaming networks, which is what I have. I don't have cable. I don't have regular TV. Sometimes I think I should get a booster antenna, but then I'm like, no, I'm probably going to watch Netflix or Hulu or, The Simpsons, which is going on right now. So like, I think that's a good way to say it from your research, is that Netflix definitely does help raise that, or take down that stereotype, because that's also where my character comes from, Todd, who is in the BoJackman show, which is a Netflix original, and that's where I finally get a character who actually and represents me too, and in a way that doesn't look stereotypic, that doesn't sound stereotypic, who is asexual, and he isn't somebody who's like grossed out by sex or anything like that. He's just like, I'd rather do all these other business ventures. I'd rather do other stuff. This is just not a priority. So it's totally an actual real representation.
However, I think the struggle is only, as far as getting representation out there, is only dependent on kind of our time period, because for like our parents' generation, it's growing up in a time where being a part of the LGBT community is not as common as it is now. And so as we get older and as more people replace the people who are doing TV now, for all we know, it could be like in the next 10, 20 years, you'll have a lot more people on TV of different variations on like characters as a part of that community, because you'll have so many people that are newer, that are younger, and come from a different generation, where it's not so much a weird thing to see on TV.
Yeah, but we kind of need that representation now to like help this generation, help the next generation, because if we don't have that now, like, we're gonna grow up with the same kind of struggles this generation did have. Like I said, like, I didn't have anything, so I was like, okay, I must be this thing because I'm definitely not straight, so I kind of must be this. And then as I got older and people started explaining more stuff to me, I was like, oh, this one makes more sense. So I got less information, so I was kind of like settling on like a sexuality. So like, because I finally got more information, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And I think because it's almost like we're having to wait till our generation starts making stuff, we're almost screwing over the next generation, and they're already getting screwed over a lot.
Well, I'm not saying no way. I'm just saying.
No,
like,
but I know what you're saying. As
it can only go up from here,
right?
You know?
I definitely get what you're saying, but I think it's helping now that there is some more open-minded TV going on now, and not because it's on network TV, but because of streaming channels and even YouTube. YouTube has a lot of like BS on it, but YouTube does have some great ways to express the LGBT and like podcasting now.
They even have their own section, don't they, on Netflix?
Yes, they do.
They do.
They do.
So, which is again like a great thing to have, and even on YouTube, they're able to share, struggles and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, there's somebody out there like me. So I think that's a good way to help like build that. So in the next 10 years, it's not such an oddity, and it's like, okay, here's just everything now. So definitely. But,
yes. Well. Wow, we're at 45 minutes. Like, we've ended this. I
wasn't sure if we were gonna get to it all, but I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got a lot of conversation in here. It went well.
Yes.
It went well.
It went well. Yeah.
Are you guys nervous?
No. I just was like, how long can we talk about this?
I got more.
I know us. I know what.
I wrote down
when it comes to serious topics. It's like we may have 12 minutes, 13 minutes in this. I don't know if we have 45.
I wrote down like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 examples, and I got through them all. So. Anyway,
you boys are weird.
You can follow us at Behind the Usher Station on Instagram, Usher Station Pod on Twitter. You can email us behindtheusherstation@gmail.com, and you can also find us on Facebook and YouTube at Behind the Usher Station. Where can we follow your beautiful faces at?
You guys can go ahead first.
You can find me at Jonathan Keys.
You find me on Instagram at Not Jerome Red, because I'm not Jerome Red.
And you can find me on Instagram at Living My Okayest Life. And again, I will be walking in the Seattle Pride Parade with Seattle Children's Hospital on Sunday, June 30th. So come out and come look for me. I will be probably one of the only Spanish people in that group. So I will not be hard to find. But come out and enjoy the fun of the Pride Parade on Sunday. It'll be great.
Yep.
All right. Well, good night to you all, or good day,
morning,
depending on what you're listening to this.
Yeah, what time you're listening to this? I normally listen to these on the car ride. So.
What car ride though? What time?
Anytime it's when I just feel like going to work. It's only about 45-minute ride, so
when you feel like going to work,
you know what? We're
pretty much at this point.
I could see that with this. I could see that. Okay, now we're just drawing out time. So
anyway, see you later, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.